We are the Pilbara Collaboration Group. You might have heard of us. We're a new thing. We're an old thing.
We perform quite regularly.
Stop it. Okay. You can go sit down now. We unofficially formed our band back in 2016 with Chris Kernow, actually. And the idea was for the kind of NRM, support agencies to get together a bit more and to collaborate more. So the six groups are Kimberley Pilbara Cattlemen's Association, representing the pastoral interests. Then we also have Joe Kuiper from the Pilbara Mesquite Management Committee. We love acronyms, but I'll try and spell them all out for you. We've got Mackay from Rangelands NRM. We have, well, it used to be me, but now it's Lorinda Timms from Greening Australia, and also Blair. And we have the Gascoyne Catchment Group. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make it here today, but Dean Revell was actually on one of those slides doing the self-herding work. He's the executive officer down there. And there's the Pilbara Regional Biosecurity Group. So Joe's going to do a bit of a shout out for Bill and tell us about some of the stuff that those guys are doing. But yeah, so the idea behind it was for us to collaborate more, to we've obviously got a massive space, a lot of different interests, a lot of different areas to cover. And collaboration is key, really. It's hard to get stuff done if we're not all working on the same page. The other idea behind it, though, is to get the word out more with the pastoral community. I've been based in Headland for 6 years working in this space, and I still, come across stations who have never heard of Greening Australia or Rangelands. So it's really about us getting out into the pastoral space. Joe and I went to the Tom Price camp draft. That was a good day at the office, just to kind of, let you guys know that we're here and what we can do to help you guys to manage these massive landscapes. So on that, some of the goals from this, and I should start by saying we've got some funding from the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development through the state NRM Smarty grants. So that's a project that we're working under at the moment. And for that, we have the Cole Stanton Field Day. So Cole's going to talk after afternoon tea. But Cole is more of a practical man. He likes to be out and about in the grader. And so there is a flyer up on the notice board. And I've got a couple of hard copies here as well. But at Norina Downs on Monday and at Glenflorrie on Wednesday from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. he's going to do some erosion control field days. So you'll get a little bit of a talk through of that today, but out of the field days we'll have the grader, we'll be out in the paddock, and we'll actually be doing the earthworks and showing you guys how to use the graders to rehydrate your landscape and fix erosion issues. So thank you very much for staying on for that. The other stuff we're doing is Gascoyne Catchments Group have a Rangelands self-monitoring app. It was developed by pastoralists for pastoralists down in the Gascoyne region, and we're using some of this funding to put the Pilbara land systems in and also the Pilbara plants into this app. So that'll be happening hopefully in the next few months, and so it'll be it's literally on your iPhone. You can set it up, you can go out, you don't have to be in range, you take your photos, you do your monitoring. Once you get back into Wi-Fi, it uploads onto the cloud, and you can keep a really good record of what's happening on your station. With the new rental review and changes to the tenure lease and everything, the government is looking at doing a lot of kind of stuff over satellite, and satellite obviously has its use, but it can not always reflect what's happening on the ground. And so if you as a station are doing your own monitoring, you can tell your own story. You can say that's not degradation, there might have been a fire through, or yes, it looks bad, but we've been monitoring and it's actually been improving for the last 2 years. So it's just a really good tool to help you manage your systems. I think that was all from me. We have applied for some more funding. That should come out, we should find out about that at the end of the year. And that's to continue the Pilbara Collaboration Group, but also start one up in the Kimberley, so to try and get some similar stuff happening up there.
And that would mean if we get the money for the Kimberley, that would also mean we can further upgrade the Rangelands monitoring app to actually have the Kimberley species data in there as well.
Yeah, so we haven't forgotten you, Kimberley. We're trying very hard to get similar stuff happening up there as well. So that's enough from me. I'll hand over to Gray next.
Thanks, Pip. Those who don't know me, my name is Gray Mackay. I'm based up in Broome and work for Rangelands NRM. I suppose for those who know NRM, been around for a while. Every 5 years we go into this hibernation or this hiatus where the federal government tries to work out what to do next. So I'm just in one of those transition periods where I'm no stress, got nothing to do. Oh my God, there's so much stress. Anyway, so we're Rangelands NRM. We're a non-government agency. We're a community group, and we effectively we help with collaborations. We help with partnerships. We facilitate work on the ground. We provide, when we have funding, we provide funding to groups like the Kimberley Pilbara Cattlemen Association, the West Kimberley LCDC. We're heavily involved with them. And we do a lot of stuff in the Pilbara as well around the Fortescue Marsh, and we support groups like the Pilbara Mesquite Management Committee. So yeah, I suppose at the moment what's in front of us is I suppose just spreading the word about what we have been doing. Our main work, apart from supporting groups that support the pastoral industry, is to actually work with pastoralists themselves on the ground and implement a lot of the stuff that you're hearing here. So there's a whole suite of tools, as you can imagine. There's erosion, there's self-herding, there's so many things you can do from an NRM space. We don't want to bombard you with all of that, which is why we'd like to work through these groups, and they sort of tell us, well, what's the most important thing at the moment, so that we get someone like Cole out here and we spread him far and wide, so you're all having a bit of a talk about erosion. And then, so when Bruce and Dean were doing the self-herding, Rangelands was pretty heavily involved in that, so that was really good to go around with these guys and see the actual work taking place. And they got a lot of bad raps, I think, initially about, it's just like training a dog, and they're going, yeah, it's so much effort, but when you actually start to see the results, it's quite mind-blowing. So it's great that we've got a book out now. You can actually take away some of the tips and techniques. It's not something you start at the beginning, you read from the beginning to the end. It's you pick the tool that you need to do the task you want. So, if we get enough interest with self-herding, then that's something we can, again, get a bit of momentum and get the guys up to work on a few stations for you, so you get that one-on-one to support you to skill up and take it from there. One of the things we're working on at the moment, we've got some funding through MLA and University of Southern Queensland and the Department of Ag in Queensland, and that's a Northern Australia climate program. So I just spent the last week in Toowoomba, where it was -3.9. I didn't need to go to a weather and climate training to tell me that was cold, but anyway. So yeah, I spent a week with Bureau of Meteorology and University of Southern Queensland learning all about weather forecasting and climate. And I suppose the layman's reporting back on how that went is there's now a brand new model that's been developed called Access S, and it's supposed to be better than anything they've ever had. So that's only been in play for about 3 or 4 weeks. So the Bureau of there's two parts of that model. One is to do forecasting, and when we say forecasting, that's like your 7-day weather forecast, what's going to happen in the next 7 days. But there's also a part of that model that's all about modelling climate. So you can actually start to get, previously it used to be a few months, was as further as they can look ahead. Now it's about 6 months they can start to get a real lot of indicators about what sort of wet season you're going to have, when it's going to start, how hot it's going to be, and things like that. So part of the MLA funding is to actually get a support person on the ground to come around and visit the stations and help you understand this very technical terminology and how you can use some of the apps and things that are out there, tell you which ones not to use. I won't mention any names because I don't know if they're here, but there's a few apps out there and weather things that are a bit dodgy. So it's good to put you in touch with the ones that are actually reliable and help you understand them. And the whole point of that is to actually help better mitigate risk on the station, included in your planning, what sort of wet season you're going to have, and have that information, a bit more reliance on what they're telling you up front. That's probably about it from me. Yeah, just wanted to say hello. Do the can, but the girls weren't keen, because I know you're probably all getting tired. I'll hand over to Joe.
G'day everyone, how you going? My name's Joe. I actually am the project manager for the Pilbara Mesquite Management Committee, but I'm going to change hats for a second, and I am also an associate member of the Pilbara Region Recognised Biosecurity Group. For some of you might not even have any idea what that is, but it's basically it's a group that it's a statutorily required group, and all the stations all around the state, whether in the Kimberley, Pilbara, Gascoyne, whatever, you pay a declared pest levy. So any of those pests, whether it's donkeys, camels, horses, dogs, mesquite, Parkinsonia, cactus, all of those declared pests, as pastoral stations, you pay a levy to the RBG of your area, and that RBG is responsible for using those funds, which are matched dollar for dollar by the State Ag Department, to manage those pests on a landscape scale. So the RBG has a committee of about 10 people, give or take. Most of those are pastoral station managers or owners, and there's a couple of associate members like myself. We have also have Department of Parks and Wildlife on the associate membership, as well as a mining company representation. So that committee of people basically on an annual basis prioritises where we're going to spend that big bucket of money every year, trying to prioritise. Are camels the most important things? Are weeds the most important things? Are dogs, etc., the most important things? So a few of the programs that you guys would be familiar with that the RBG manages and delivers each year is the large feral herbivore aerial shooting programs. There happens a lot of it in the East Pilbara, that desert interface area. So that costs about 300 grand a year to deliver. The other big one is obviously the 1080 wild dog aerial baiting program that happens every year. And so just a reminder to everyone, the Pilbara Aerial Baiting Program is happening next week. So there's lots of media releases, and please share posts and that sort of things. We all recognise that aerial baiting is part of our tools against managing wild dogs in our environment. We obviously get a lot of negative feedback from the broader community who might not necessarily understand the value of that to our industry. So please share those posts, and just be aware that it's happening next week, and it happens across 55 of our 62 pastoral stations, and a lot of the associated UCL and conservation estate as well at the same time. So basically everywhere. So okay, so that's the RBG hat off, and back to me. So the Mesquite Committee is a bit of an oddball. As far as I know, it's actually unique in Australia. The organisation was set up by the Ag Department and Department of Parks, or CALM at the time, in 2001. And the group is a non-profit, non-government incorporated group. Our job is to help deliver, coordinate, advocate and support the effective and efficient management of declared weeds in the Pilbara. So I think the Ag Department keeps on making noise about franchising us to the Kimberley and the Gascoyne, but I just draw a line at the Pilbara because it keeps me a little bit closer to home. And essentially my job is about making sure that everyone is, you've got the tools, the resources, the skills, and even some funding to do declared weed management. So this is my map. I got this week. I love it. So just to give you an example of where we're working generally, we work out here at Roy Hill on the upper, just above the Fortescue Marsh. Out there I work across 5 different tenures for 3 different mining companies, a pastoral lease and DBCA, Department of Parks and Wildlife, across their estate, and I deliver the Parkinsonia. The Parkinsonia is one of our weeds, where there's a legislative requirement for land managers to manage. So I help all of those different landowners manage that weed across the entirety of that landscape. So the infestation is about 30 k's long. It straddles half a dozen land tenures. So I essentially just get money from everyone and deploy it in the most efficient and effective way. So I work there. We work obviously down around Minderoo, Uralla, Onzo, because we've got a huge mesquite and Parkinsonia infestation down there. All the way out the west coast, and just recently, and most recently, and probably most importantly, and I'll give you a bit more specific example about how we're working on the Ngurra burr outbreak at De Grey. So again, it's one of those infestations that occurs across multiple tenures. We've got at least 3 stakeholders directly involved so far. So the key stakeholder, obviously, with most of the loos, is De Grey Station. They've got this new Ngurra burr infestation come up on their property, and the best guess, or to our knowledge, it's come from the main roads to Grey River Rest area. So that's a 10-hectare land tenure, and we understand that the burr has been moved in, most likely from the Kimberley, on tourism, caravans, a dog, whatever. However, it's probably started at that rest area. The reason we know that is because it's not any further downstream, so it doesn't get any further, up into the river catchment from there. It starts there and it spreads for about 30 k's further down. Most of the infestation in terms of density and abundance was at that rest area, and then sort of scattered infestations further down. So obviously that's complex. Obviously Main Roads, as the land manager, has a legislative requirement to manage that weed, and to their credit this time they're actually doing really well. I know a lot of you probably had to bump shoulders with those big state agencies with your work on a hopefully not daily basis but fairly regular basis. It's a big wheel to turn. They have budget forecasting and stuff that takes about 18 months to get expenditure out of them. But because of the severity of this Ngurra Burr issue, they've actually ponied up about 110 grand in less than 3 weeks. So, we're now going to be using their funding to try and get on top of this Ngurra Burr infestation now. And that's just best practice weed management 101. That's nothing exciting. You hit it fast, hit it hard when it's a new infestation. So also the stakeholders are Department of Ag. Obviously they have a legislative requirement to come in and use the big stick, if you like, to try and poke people in the right direction. And obviously De Grey's as another stakeholder. Parks and Wildlife, BHP Rail, BHP, Water Corp, Telstra, Shire Port Hedland, everyone's sort of interested in how it's going and all that sort of stuff, but certainly the stakeholders that are sitting at the table at the moment and putting in the resources to manage it are those three main ones. So I guess to scroll down even further into that, what we've done for that to manage that infestation so far, and it's basically what I do, is we heard about it first up. It was kind of cute. The Main Roads people, like the contractors that go out and do all the site inspections, reported it to their manager at a toolbox, and then sometime months later the manager reported it to his manager, who reported it to the Enviro guy who just happened to be standing next to him at the time, and the Enviro guy told his boss down south, who happened to be an ex-colleague of mine, and she rang me, the non-profit, non-government, independent organisation, said, "Hey Joe, what tell us about Ngurra Burr." I of course was like, "Oh my God, we don't have it in the Pilbara, we're so lucky." She's like, "Yeah, you do." And at that point I said, okay, you probably need to call the Ag Department, given that that's a thing that you're supposed to do. So they did that, and then the wheel started turning. And within a week of that, we had 10 people, Ag Department, myself, and 8 people from Main Roads on the ground pulling out Ngurra Burr. We removed about 2 decks worth of Ngurra Burr, about 1 deck's worth, like cattle truck deck worth. We physically removed it and buried it from the Grey River rest area, about another deck's worth from scattered along the next sort of 30 odd k's of the river. And we also sprayed, about the same amount, again, where it was too big, like physically too big, too wide, too long to physically remove. So we sort of deployed the troops very, very rapidly, and I guess that's one of the benefits to the Pilbara of having the independent non-profit sort of agency, or me basically, because I can work cross tenure. We can talk to everyone. I'm not going to, I'm not here to make a profit. So it's how we can keep that sort of really, efficient weed management going. So yeah, we were out there again, myself and the local biosecurity officer, Lara, from the Ag Department, for a couple of days this week, again walking up and down. And even though it's not the growing season, we're not expecting to see bulk Ngurra Burr germinating since we were there 8 weeks ago, but we pulled out 10 plants. Like we've just absolutely smashed the bulk of that infestation at first. The seeds in Ngurra Burr last for about 7 years, so that's our minimum now monitoring and surveillance program. Assuming that we can cover all of it and make sure none of it sets seed, then we should be able to get back to a real maintenance level after 7 years. So that's good. So my take-home message, just because I have these conversations with people all the time, and it usually starts with a panicked phone call about, "Oh my God, I've got mesquite on my back paddock." 9 out of 10 times it's not mesquite, it's mimosa. So if you ever think you've got a weed, just give me a call. I can help you talk through the identification of it, like with most things, like bellyache bush versus, castor oil plant, the whole lot. So I can help you talk through. If we can't figure it out over the phone, send me a photo. We'll see how we go from there. Or I'll just come visit you. Like I said, I get it. I'm always around. If I got frequent flyer points for kilometres in my Land Cruiser, we'd be all going to London like every other week. It'd be great. But yeah, so if you think you've got a nasty weed, give me a call and I'll help you sort it out. The other thing is that I want you to take, the other take-home message from my weed management point of view is, and it doesn't matter whether you're an individual station manager or the person doing the mill runs or the manager of 10 stations or whatever, you'd be surprised how cheap it is to do this stuff. You'd be surprised how easy it is to do this. It's not like it's a... We had a meeting yesterday about the Nagura burst stuff with the regional manager of Main Roads, and he basically walked in saying, I don't have any money, I don't have $1 million, I don't have any capacity to help you. And so, well, actually, it's your responsibility to do so. However, he's walked out of there in the day sort of saying, oh, we already do that. And we already can do this. We can already incorporate these best practice weed management into our current processes. So if you can, everyone can just, it's not that difficult. Even the actual methods we use to kill the big bad and nasty weeds, it's not rocket surgery. It's simple. And if you don't have the knowledge or the equipment or the skills or the training or the chemical or whatever, it's actually my job to give it to you. But literally I come and hand out spray packs and chemical and training and identification cards and the like. So don't let that be a barrier to you not having a go at getting rid of the dozen mesquite in the back paddock or whatever it is. So I'm here to help, and essentially my help is free. So there you go.